opportunity to extend greetings to all of you this afternoon. As introduced, I was Secretary of the Ministry of Overseas Affairs some time back. To be precise, between February 2008 and December 2009. And that job in the government is one of the things which I have enjoyed most. When I was asked to speak at this session, well, the theme is primarily the contribution of the Indian diaspora to the, or Indian immigrants to the economies of various countries. I was just remembering one of the first things which I did on my job as Secretary of Overseas Affairs was to search for material on the contribution of Indians to the various countries, primarily the economic contribution, and one could find tremendous quantity of material on this. There were several studies, several papers, especially in relation to the role of Indian immigrants in the United States. The figures, the theories, almost everything is too well known to a group like this, so I would certainly not like to go into the details. And even after I was here, after listening to the speakers, I did hear the speakers mentioning the role, the very distinguished role that has been played by the Indian immigrants in various societies, and particularly in the United States. What is significant is that a great deal of value addition in the US economy takes place through the immigrants. Whether it is in the field of management, engineering, and technology, and these are the high-skilled areas, and these are the areas where the Indians contribute the most. Immigration policy of the United States obviously is also governed by the benefits that would be accrued to the country because of the type of migration that has. The benefit obviously is to that country, and definitely India also benefits because the accumulated and collective wisdom of this diaspora is available to our country as well. Maybe not immediately, but there is a process of diffusion. There is a process of interaction as people get settled down in their jobs or in their positions in that country. So if it is innovation, Indians are there in the location in the United States. And that has actually prompted a lot of thinking in India as to why the same set of Indian engineers, scientists, management professionals, why they are not able to go into innovative thinking within this country. And this is immediately part of the debate on the Indian education system, on the system of academic and other industrial research that is taking place in this country. And there has been a lot of positive inputs that have come out and that have been proposed as a result of such studies. What I'm saying is that the contribution of Indian professionals to the United States economy, to the whole sphere of knowledge in the United States has been quite massive. I do not want to go into details of how the Patels put up the hotels, or these are all too well known to be discussed at anything like this. When we come to Europe, it's particularly the UK, which is the home for a large number of Indians. And the UK-Indian relationship is very, very special even after 65 years of independence. And this will probably continue to be very special even in the future. there is something very distinguished about the societal and political thinking in the United Kingdom. Even when we look back, say if you look at the 19th century, you find that the type of thinking that was brought out by people like Karl Marx or James Stuart Mill, these could have happened in the middle of the 19th century only in London. So it could not have happened anywhere else in the world. And of course, the Indian association with the British in those days was that we are going to be part of the same country. Our country was ruled by that country. But at the same time, the Indian upper class found that the best education was in Britain. Mahatma Gandhi or Jawaharlal Nehru and most of our distinguished national leaders had their university education in that country. And that did not convert them into British, but that made them into nationalist Indians. Traditions, of course, have partially survived, but there have been lots of changes as well. And there are lots of questions which are being discussed. Questions like why are new Indian doctors in the UK not getting the type of acceptance that they get in the US? It's something which is being debated. Well, one doesn't have a good answer for that. Then we have, of course, what's called the old diaspora. The old diaspora, it's a simple introduction to say that they are indentured labour that moved from India to the various plantation countries, sugarcane plantations and other plantations. But then, if you look at the origins of the migrants, most of them, the early migrants moved from eastern Uttar Pradesh and western Bihar. And these are, these regions are very backward regions, even as of now. But then if you look at it historically, maybe it probably doesn't make much sense to go back maybe 2000 years, but Bihar was the capital of powerful empires in this country. Bihar is ruled a major part of northern India. And there is that tradition that is associated with that power which they had in the past. And then, over the years, of course, there may be any number of factors we can go on discussing as to why Bihar became poor or Eastern UP became poor, and all that is that's debated. But then there was that spirit of adventure. There was that willingness to move in the people of these places 150 years back, which took them to the other countries. Most of the movement, most of the migration was voluntary. There are stories of forced migration as well, but there is a lot of documentation on this, and the British were very, very good at documentation. So we have lots of documents on the movement of this people. And most of the movement, as documented, even by independent writers, was voluntary. So there was that voluntary will, the desire and the capacity to move. And now, of course, if they are powerful politically, if they are powerful economically in their country, it is that spirit of like willingness to move, the willingness to acquire new knowledge, to do new work, which probably took them to these guys. Then, of course, if we go to the next category, which is the new generation migrants to the Gulf countries. Here again, it's a story of success, mostly to a very, very dark extent. One has, of course, come across stories which are very, very sad, very, very heartache, very very, very sordid tales of harassment, inhuman treatment and all. But that is a very, very minor, one could even say very insignificant part of the overall story. The overall story of the Indian movement to the Gulf is one of economic success. And here we have a set of people who are always remaining an active part of their motherland. This is because the knowledge and the desire to move back at some appropriate point of time in life is very much there. But now the way, the living conditions in these countries have dramatically changed. Earlier, even sort of middle-level professionals would not think of moving their families to the Gulf countries, or there was nothing called a sort of a family life in those countries. It was all bachelor existence in the type of accommodation that is available there. But now things have changed a lot. Families, people are living in the Gulf countries with their families, and with that, actually, if you look at the Kerala economy, there was some mention of that earlier. But if you look at the type of entertainment which is provided by the Kerala media, the television channels, these are all actually now focused on the Gulf. Film awards of Malayalam films are taking place in the Gulf countries. The events are held in the Gulf countries. To that extent, the activity has moved from Kerala to the Gulf countries, and plane loads of guests and artists move from here to the Gulf countries for organizing and participating in this kind of activities. So overall, to a group like this, I thought it was not fair to go into the various details of the type of success that one has seen in various parts of the world. Personally, I had a lot of interaction with people who have done well, and it's very, very gratifying and satisfying to see that our brothers and sisters have succeeded very substantially in other parts of the world. It is not simple. You are an outsider. You are different. You have been brought up in a different way. Your thinking is invariably Indian fascist like an Indian name. And the Indianness is something which cannot be taken out of you. And it is this that probably provides the essential values and the strength for acquiring the type of success that has been achieved by many. Of course, in the future, I'm sure there will be several other issues that will come up for discussion, because one should really expect a suspicious society. The rest of society may not always be very happy with the type of achievements that the Indian diaspora has made. There will be questions of ethics. There have been instances of individuals being involved in issues involving ethical practices or unethical practices. And then these are all again individual cases which do not really merit much of discussion. I'm sure the Indian migrants to the other countries in future also, because in the future, India as a major provider of human capital to the rest of the world would continue to influence the economies of the world, because they will influence the economies of those countries as well as that of India. And in that sense, the impact of the diaspora's influence on the whole world's economy is going to be very, very substantial. Well, friends, let me stop here. I must again thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to greet you at this meeting, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohan.